yourself for more opportunities around the corner. I'm Psychic Angela Thomas, and my website is angelathomas.org.
Hey everybody, this is Erica Getch, and I want to keep you connected every Friday night at 8 p.m. Pacific on the Galactic Connection. As always, I'll be taking your calls in the second hour, and as always, TGC is glad to be a part of the UFO Paranormal Radio Network. So please check out tgcradio.com. Hope to see you there.
Whoa! Did you hear?
Listen to the Church of Mavis radio show, hosted by Jeffrey Pritchett, 11 p.m. Eastern, Saturday nights. Follow your weird and journey into the high strange. Be sure to stop by www.churchofmavisradio.com for upcoming shows, paranormal news, and show archives. That's www.churchofmavisradio.com.
Hey! Hi there. Got your attention? I'm Gia Scott, and I was curious what you were doing from 7 to 9 p.m. Central Time on Tuesdays. See, I host this really interesting little radio program that airs live then, and we bring in all sorts of guests. Authors, experiencers, and everything in between. It's paranormal and guaranteed to make you go, My guest list is always up at www.giascott.com, and do tune in to the Dawn of Shades from 7 to 9 p.m. on Tuesdays.
Tune in to the Mind Cemetery with your hosts Chip and Nicole every Monday night at 9 p.m. Eastern.
Exclusively on the UFO Paranormal Radio Network. We delve into UFOs, abductions, ghosts, aliens, conspiracies, and cryptozoology.
And how could you ever forget about those creepy topics you won't hear on your local news?
This is where I would insert my obligatory skeptical statement. The Mind Cemetery, where the paranoia about the paranormal comes to rest.
Follow us on Twitter and subscribe to us on Facebook. Also, check us out on our website, mindcemetery.com, for show updates and the critically acclaimed Mind Cemetery blog.
It's not critically acclaimed, but you should check it out anyway, mindcemetery.com.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Benetti, and along with Joe Montaldo, we host News on the Flip Side. Come join us every Saturday night at 7 p.m. Central for our 3-hour program. We have opinions on everything, and we're not afraid to share them. False history gets made all day, every day. The truth of the new is never on the news, but you can find it here with News on the Flip Side. Remember, don't be politically correct. Just be correct. Join us.
Tune in to UFO Undercover, Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern, with your host, Joe Montaldo, right here on the Paranormal Radio Network.
are live. All right, well, I think we're going. I've got kind of a little bit of an echo here, but we're going to go on with the show anyway. And hello, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the Unabridged Universe. If you've been a fan of the Paranormal Radio Network, you've probably heard the name around before. Several years ago, I had a show by that name. And, well, after an extremely long hiatus, I'm back. And we're not just back, but we're actually new and improved. I've got Heather Garish with me. She's going to be my co-host on this interesting ride we're going to be taking. And I don't know, the old show was kind of a general paranormal UFO subject-related show. Here we're going to try to not get into that quite too much because, honestly, we've already got news on the flip side here on the show with Joe Montaldo and Stephanie Benetti. Well, they can't cover all of the news in 3 hours. And one thing that Heather and I have noticed in particular, that there's a lot of news out there that simply does not get put out there for your perusal. I mean, if you just watch CNN, you'd think that the only thing that was going on right now would be the Trayvon Martin case. Kanye West had a baby, and some old Southern woman called a black person a racial epithet 20 years ago. Big whoop-de-doo. Well, we've noticed there are a lot of stories that we think need to be put out there. You know, back in the days before the Internet, you would see these things more or less on Section J, page 39 of the New York Times. Nowadays, with the whole Internet information boom and everything that we've got, these stories are still out there, but they're in the dark, dingy, not brightly illuminated corners of the Internet, not simply they get the attention that they should. So we're going to try to do that. Well, hey, Heather, what you got going on?
Oh, not much. It's been a very hot day out here in Reno. We hit a record high of 103, and I have 5 more days of it. So, yeah, it's been fun. Yeah, and also I think we want to bring up that we're going to make it we're all citizen reporters. We're going to try to bring people on hopefully from around the world to say, hey, this is what's going on in Australia or New Zealand, or we'll see. Hopefully we can get some people to contact us and say, hey, this is what's going on, and we want the Americans to know about it. And we can say, hey, cool, we'll talk about it. There's a lot of stuff going on. So from the economy to the environment to you name it, everything's out there. Hopefully we're going to also get some clear information out there, too. There seems to be a lot of, you watch CNN, the mainstream, and they say one thing, and you go to the original news report, and you're like, wait a minute, that's not exactly what's going on. So we want to clear that up and say, hey, this is actually the truth of the news. Don't believe the mainstream media because they're giving you lies or propaganda. So we're going to talk about that.
I know, and just one example of that was what was going on with with the protests and the riots that were going on in Brazil. I mean, we're seeing like signs of them happening on social networking and being reported locally on the internet. But it seems like, the 3 big players and the BBC included basically weren't even covering them. I mean, I'm watching like live videos being uploaded to YouTube of civilians just straight up having enough and more or less bum rushing a line of riot cops and stomping one of them damn near to death. And, I basically found that video when it was an hour old. I was about the 17th person that had viewed it. And it's been up for about a week and less than 1,000 people have viewed the thing. I mean, I really wonder what's up with that. I mean, when the Arab Spring happened over there in Egypt, I mean, the media here in the United States covered it like, it was something great and grand that America was doing that we should be taking credit for. Look at everything that's going on. Now that it's happening in Brazil, I mean, 2 days after basically major riots and protests were going on and riot cops were coming out trying to force people off of the streets, a couple of days later I finally see the BBC start to report on it, right? And what was the first thing that most of us Americans had heard of that? Oh, my God, look at them all rioting down in Brazil because they raised the bus fare the equivalent of 10 cents. They were basically trying to lie to us and tell us that was basically what it was all about. But, I mean, there was a whole lot more to that.
Yeah, and what's interesting when you really look at the story, what they're really protesting about is they're mad about the World Cup and the Olympics, and there's a lot of corruption going on in the government. And where does that sound familiar? I think here in the U.S., too, we have lots of corruption going on. So it's everywhere. It's not just here. It's everywhere. So.
And, even like a lot of the articles I've read that, these journalists, quote unquote, have pretty much a condescending article of Brazil. They're talking about people riding because the bus rates are raised 10 cents, and they're sitting here talking about how Brazil is an extremely poor third world country, which is not actually the case. As far as South America goes, I think Brazil is doing rather well. And, one of the ways that you can tell more or less how a country is doing is by following their automotive market. And I've been following the Brazilian automotive market for some time, and they have basically gone beyond the third world, crap box Econo beaters that they sell in a lot of other places. And Brazil is actually pretty much making that second world, first world transition right now. The country is bringing in a lot of money. And like Heather mentioned, people are getting pissed off for a number of reasons. There's a lot of money moving through Brazil. And the Brazilians are taxed at rates that would make most Americans blush. We would start the next American Revolution if we were taxed at the same rates they were. They've got a huge, they've got an oil industry, they've got a gas industry, agriculture is absolutely huge. The country's actually doing rather well off, but you read what the newspapers want you to think about it. They're framing it as a third world country that people are pissed off about bus tickets. No, people are genuinely mad. The culture, this is a country that's making a lot of money, and people are wondering how come we have no hospitals, how come we have no schools, how come our streets are complete and total potholes, and why do we have raw sewage running down the streets? That's really what they're getting mad about. But no, if you listen to the mainstream media, it's a 10-cent bus ticket increase.
Yeah, it's really sad what's going on. I'm hoping our media does not turn into, I posted it on our Facebook page, but if you go, there's this website for Greece. I used to follow all the Greece news, and slowly, I don't know if anyone's been following Greece lately, but they're still getting hacked, and they're getting bought out by the big bankers, and the taxpayers that have to foot the bill instead of the bankers going bankrupt, basically. And so their infrastructure and everything else is paying for it. Well, I go to this website, and guess what? They just have their name. There's no news. So hopefully our news doesn't turn into that where you just get a blank page with the name and no news. That's going to be really scary if we go that way.
Oh, and speaking of the news, one of the things that we're definitely going to cover is, just the way the entire media and the institution of journalism itself has more or less completely and totally turned on John Snowden and Glenn Greenwald. Jesus, Heather, I'm almost a little bit too upset to explain it. I'm going to have to let you explain that David Gregory interview on Meet the Press.
Basically what happened on Meet the Press, David Gregory, I don't know if anyone's watched his show. It's off of his NBC's Meet the Press. He's a Sunday morning show that comes on. It's the, talking heads. They have the political opponents every Sunday. I stopped watching it. But basically they would have like a red or blue-red conversation going on about whatever political topic is coming on. So David Gregory has Glenn Greenwald on from The Guardian, and he's like, Glenn, don't you think, because you helped, Snowden with his documents and everything, don't you think you should be implicated and charged in this? And he's like, what? Greenwald's like, I can't believe you even call yourself a journalist to ask me that question. And where this comes, I think a lot of this comes from, which I don't know when you guys were born. Well, I was born in 74, so this is right at the end of, I think, maybe Nixon was already out of office. But my parents tell me stories of the whole Watergate scandal. And they kept telling me every time they would turn on the news, it kept getting worse and worse and worse and worse, and I could not believe what they saw. So I've always been interested in Watergate and watched a lot and read a lot, and even watched the British documentary and the original interview with Nixon. And when you watch it, you're just kind of like, God, this guy's arrogant. What's happened? And And I'm trying to think of the movie and the British guy that actually interviewed Nixon, but he actually asked him some hard questions. He didn't softball it. I mean, this was back in the 70s, and today no one asks these hardball questions. That's what it's come down to. It takes a foreign entity, a foreign news organization overseas with an English channel to ask these hard questions, which is sad. So that hopefully we can get to the root of some of this and hopefully bring on some of these journalists too to say, hey, this is what we're facing, this is what's going on. You know, this is what you need to know about too. How about you, Jason? Hello?
Oh, hell, I actually had my microphone muted for a little bit, and I didn't even realize it. But, yeah, as we were just talking about, I mean, it's not only our media falling down on the job, but it almost seems like our media is becoming completely and totally complicit. And the only thing that they are more or less doing is repeating the official line out of the government. I mean, I'm about to play a clip where David Gregory, the guy on Meet the Press, and I really believe the only reason he got a job on NBC News is because he kind of looked like Tom Brokaw used to back in the day anyway. But here he is, basically, one journalist turning on another journalist. Here, you know what? Listen to it for yourself.
You are a polemicist here. You have a point of view. You are a columnist. You're also a lawyer. You do not dispute that Edward Snowden has broken the law, do you?
No, I think he's very clear about the fact that he did it because his conscience compelled him to do so, just like Daniel Ellsberg did 50 years ago when he released the Pentagon Papers and also admits that he broke the law. I think the question, though, is how can he be charged with espionage? He didn't work for a foreign government. He could have sold this information for millions of dollars and enriched himself. He didn't do any of that either. He stepped forward, and as we want people to do in a democracy as a government official, learned of wrongdoing and exposed it so we could have a democratic debate about the spying system. Do we really want to put people like that in prison for life when all they're doing is telling us as citizens what our political officials are doing in the dark?
Final question for you, but I'd like you to hang around. I just want to get Pete Williams in here as well. To the extent that you have aided and abetted Snowden, even in his current movements, why shouldn't you, Mr. Greenwald, be charged with a crime?
I think it's pretty extraordinary that anybody who would call themselves a journalist would publicly muse about whether or not other journalists should be charged with felonies. The assumption in your question, David, is completely without evidence, the idea that I've aided and abetted him in any way. The scandal that arose in Washington before our stories began was about the fact that the Obama administration is trying to criminalize investigative journalism by going through the emails and phone records of AP reporters, accusing a Fox News journalist of the theory that you just embraced, being a co-conspirator with felonies for working with sources. If you want to embrace that theory, it means that every investigative journalist in the United States who works with their sources, who receives classified information, is a criminal. And it's precisely those theories and precisely that climate that has become so menacing in the United States. It's why the New Yorker's Jane Mayer said investigative reporting has come to a standstill, her word, as a result of the theories that you just referenced.
Well, the question of who's a journalist may be up to a debate with regard to what you're doing. And, of course, anybody who's watching this understands I was asking a question. That question has been raised by lawmakers as well. I'm not embracing anything, but obviously I take your point.
My God, I mean, did y'all actually hear that? I mean, there you have one journalist accusing another journalist of being a criminal for practicing journalism. What does this come to?
Yeah, it's been kind of crazy, and that's not the only example. I'm sure we could pull more out. Yeah, they seem to be going after the messenger, and it's not just sure. I think from every news source I've watched lately, they all do it. And I think we were talking about what actually being a traitor means. Didn't we look up the legal definition of what treason was? So even I don't think these pundits know I keep hearing Snowden being accused of treason and espionage, and I don't think these lawmakers or the pundits know what they're talking about when you actually look up the definition in the Constitution. So.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Dick Cheney, everybody from Dick Cheney all the way on down, all the pundits, everybody else, and that just kind of amazes and baffles me in the first place, that who has become Barack Obama's #1 cheerleader over this NSA security stuff? Dick Cheney is his biggest cheerleader? What kind of bizarro universe do we live in now? I mean, I never thought I would see anything like that. Well, actually, that isn't like a whole other point for another show. The whole fact that I'd have to say that Edward Snowden has done more for bipartisanship than anybody ever has in the last 50 years of the history of politics. I mean, look what he's done. People on both sides of the fence of on the whole whistleblower thing. I mean, you see Republicans and Democrats that you never would have imagined in bed together, both on the same side. Both in support of and demonizing this guy as some kind of criminal. But back to the traitor question. Everybody's saying that this guy's a traitor, right? Well, let's take a look at the history. There have not been, I think there have been less, I'd have to double check these facts, but I think I'm close here. I think less than 30 people had ever been charged with actually being traitors in the history of the country. I mean, the last actual traitor charges were actually brought on up against anybody during World War II. And in fact, treason is such a severe crime, the way it is defined, that in 1951, Ethel and Julius Rosenberg were basically giving, atomic bomb blueprints over to the Russians. They weren't even convicted of treason. They were convicted of espionage, yes, that they were, in fact, colluding with a foreign power with the intent to weaken or hurt the United States of America. That is basically the definition of espionage. Treason is more or less the same charge that is added on to somebody that you are actively in a state of war with. Well, Julius Rosenberg was never charged with treason. Even though he was caught red-handed giving secrets to the KGB, he was convicted of only espionage. Why? Because we were not officially at war with Russia when this happened. Hell, we had just got done being allies over World War II. The Cold War was just more or less starting to heat up and get serious about then. But, I mean, even he wasn't charged with treason. And I don't know, saying that Greenwald is being charged with treason is a complete and total farce. Because technically the only way we could get somebody on treason is if they gave secrets to North Korea. Because North Korea is the only country we are currently officially still at war against. We just basically never ended it after the Korean War. I mean, basically every other action, Vietnam, Ecuador, Grenada, all the other running around we did in the Middle East, Iraq 1, Iraq 2, Afghanistan, there was never a congressional declaration of war. I guess these are considered police actions or something like that. But you can't charge anybody from treason, and there's no war. But when they start using terms like, the war on terror, which we haven't really clearly defined on anybody, I mean, technically, I guess we're at war with, what are they saying, anybody that does not like the United States or has a problem with us?
Well, and the other people they're declaring war on are their own citizens. They're putting environmentalists on the terror watch list. So if that tells you anything, they're going after people that, they know things are getting bad out there. So they're going after, this is just like in Nazi Germany. I mean, it's kind of scary. If you look back at the history of what Nazi Germany did, it's the same thing is happening here, slowly eroding our rights, and you're just going, okay, what are they going to do next? I mean, you have to look up and you wonder if those drones are going to fly over and bomb one of us here. It's kind of scary.
And one of those little points of contention, and I happen to know that there are several people in the room that are not very happy about this. This is the fact that of the United States military, I mean, you are instantly singled out for attention to be considered a potential terrorist, which, is absolutely, I mean, my God, these are the people that put their lives on the line for for our country and our country's interests, and basically as soon as they come home and they're of no use to the military machine anymore, they're put on terrorist watch lists. And we've seen with all the NSA information that's being leaked out, I mean, being on one of these lists, that's enough for the government to basically say, well, we've got a right to look at every single communication you have ever basically made and store all of it and analyze all of it and not even tell you about it.
Yeah, I mean, not only that, but if you look at the whole Veterans Administration, too, it's a complete mess. They can't even take care of the veterans when they come back. I mean, it's just really sad, the state of affairs, the whole veterans thing.
Man, Heather, just today, my dad goes out to the mailbox, and, here's what happened. My dad was in the military. He was in for 14 years. He hurt his back, and they gave him a medical discharge. He hurt his back bad. My dad basically doesn't have, the lower 4 discs in his spine. There is nothing there. It's a miracle the man can walk and be as active as he is right now. Well, basically, he has that. His knees were bad. He's had a lot of hearing loss. His back is basically useless. Well, the Navy only tried to kick him out. You need 40% disability for the military to basically continue your health coverage and to more or less even try to take care of you. They wouldn't even give my dad 20%. Well, a couple of years ago, my dad had a malignant ocular melanoma pop up in his eye, and they had to take his eye out, which very well could be related to his military service. Well, either way, it adds to his disability no matter what. This happened 2 years ago, and my dad has been arguing with the VA, trying to get them to recognize this. The VA basically gave him 0% disability. He's trying to get, he's just basically trying to get his case looked at, to get some kind of disability out of it. Well, he's had his eye pulled out. All you have to do is look at him with his fake eye out, and it's like, yep, sir, you lost an eye. Doctors have sent letters. We've sent the same information to the VA 5 or 6 times. And Dad's actually gone to see 3 VA doctors, and they still apparently are unable to determine if he has lost an eye or not. And in fact, we just got another letter in the mail today that basically it's looking like the entire process is going to try to start over. And I went over the paperwork with my dad. He didn't mention anything about this having eye cancer being anything related to asbestos. Well, now all of a sudden the VA is like, oh, well, yours might be related to an asbestos case, so we need additional information, and the process is going to basically have to restart again. It's been 2.5 years. The VA has seen him 3 times. He's like, yep, no eye. And, this isn't just happening to my father either. I know a lot of people that have served in the military, especially a lot of Vietnam-era veterans, and, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. I could run down to, the Indian Doctor Pain Clinic down in Houston and basically get a script for 300 Vicodins, 300 Xanax, and 300 Somas and drive home with them. A veteran with chronic pain trying to get a handful of painkillers is basically put through the ringer and scrutinized.
Not only that, but as one of our chat room people pointed out, they have a backlog of 1 million cases right now. And I think I saw something recently that their paperwork's so insane, they don't even know where one hand is from the left hand. It's all over the place.
Well,
it's just totally insane.
Well, and let us not forget things like the absolute scandal that was at the Walter Reed Medical Center here several years back. The entire building was 70% mold, and nothing happened about it until it became a press outrage.
Yeah, that's what attention. So, yeah, it's just kind of, the whole state of affairs is completely insane.
Yeah, and I've discussed this one with you, and I just have to get this stuff off of my chest because I'm still genuinely upset about it. Here on, Tuesday night into late Thursday morning, Tuesday night into early Wednesday morning, oh my God, that completely and totally ridiculous filibuster spectacle that the Texas Senate was doing. And basically I'm going to describe what was going on here if anybody's not familiar with the story. The Texas Senate only meets once every 2 years. They're supposed to get all of their stuff done in their regular session, which, more or less happens during the spring. And anything that is basically not taken care of in the regular session, they can have an unlimited number of 30-day special sessions where they meet to get important things like, fundraising, appropriations, and whatnot taken care of that wasn't done during the regular session. Well, it just so happens that there were 5, very anti-abortion type measures that were defeated in the regular session this year. And more or less what Rick Perry tried to do was a special session takes 30 days. It's mandated in the Texas Constitution. Once it begins, after 30 days is up, once it reaches midnight, it's over. If you didn't get anything done, that session's over. That's how it's supposed to be, right? Well, they did have a few bills that they brought up and they had approved. And then on day 29 of the special session, Rick Perry, and the governor is the one who determines what is able to be brought up in a special session. On day 29, day 28, the governor decides he's going to throw Senate Bill 5 into the mix, which is basically these 5 measures that were defeated in the regular session. He threw them all into one omnibus bill and tried to ramrod it through on the last day. Now, there were 5 provisions in this thing, but the 2 main ones were there was a flat-out 20-week limit on abortions. After week 20, for no reason whatsoever, I mean, even in cases of rape of incest, if anybody wanted to decide, it just took them 5 months to decide that there would be no abortions after 20 weeks on the flawed medical premise that fetuses are supposed to be able to feel pain. And in science, I mean, most experts say no, that's not the case, but to Republicans, yes, that's what they say. Well, there was that one, and this was one of the things that they try to say is for women's own safety, but basically they were going to make the requirement that all abortions have to be performed at more or less an ambulatory surgical center. Hey, if you take a look at it, abortion could pretty much be an outpatient procedure. You give me an untwisted coat hanger and, and a dark alley, and an abortion could probably be performed, and the mother would be all right. Well, basically Texas wants to try to say that you have to be able to, if you can't do open heart surgery in a medical facility, well, then you can't do abortions there. And there is another little clause about that says any doctor that performs abortion has to be able to admit a patient in a major hospital within 30 miles away from the clinic. And this would have basically, there would have been three abortion providers left in the state of Texas that could have made the requirements tomorrow. And there are 4 more that could be brought up to spec with about $500,000 or so. So, these were all defeated individually. He thinks he's going to sneak it in at the last moment. And then Senator Wendy Davis said, no, the hell you're not. I'm going to throw a filibuster out on this one. And Texas has very strict rules for filibusters. You have to be able to stand for the entire time. You can't so much as lean on your desk. You can't be assisted by anybody. You can't take a drink. You can't use the bathroom. Basically, you have to stand up there and be like Mr. Smith goes to Washington and not move for, she had to do it for 13 hours. Well, that's within the rules. You can do a filibuster. But then it became an exercise in stretching definitions through parliamentary procedure. And I'm watching the thing stream live. It's absolutely ridiculous. Basically, you get 3 strikes in your filibuster and you're considered out. They can bring up points of order. And the point of order that they tried to bring up the most was based on the definition of germane, is what you are saying pertinent to this bill and pertinent to the topic at hand. Well, she had brought up a reference to RU-486, and one of the Republican senators, a woman, I forget which one, was like, I'm calling foul. You brought up RU-486. We're not even bringing up that official, that pill in this bill that was voted on 2011. That's not germane. Well, germane is open to interpretation, but in this case, germane ultimately comes down to a roll call vote, as if all the members of the Texas Senate decide, okay, yeah, that's the rule, then that's how it goes. And, well, it was like 20-10 basically 20-10. Republicans had the advantage, so, she ended up losing on these 3 points. And it was really sad the way that they were trying to stretch the rules to get her off anyway. So they decided that they were going to break the filibuster. Democrats said, no, we're not having any of this. We can basically appeal all these points of order. And they proceeded, they had about an hour and a half to go. They started filibustering the filibuster attempt by asking questions about parliamentary procedure that everybody had to go talk about and then everybody had to vote on. And they were killing time until about the last 15 minutes or so, and this is where it got interesting. Basically, Senator Vanderhook, a woman from South Texas somewhere, she got up. They had basically decided that the Republicans had voted to say that, all objections to breaking the filibuster had been defeated, and they decided they were going to break up their roll call vote. Well, Senator Vanderhook comes up and she says, excuse me, I tried to raise an objection before you started to take this vote, and I was not recognized. And then the Senate President, Lieutenant Governor David Dewhurst, and I don't like him, never rarely have, he says, well, you should have spoken with more authority or raised your hand or something. And then he said, well, excuse me, but what precisely does a woman have to do to be heard by her male peers in the Senate? I'm paraphrasing her loosely there. And at that point, the spectators in the gallery went mad. They started cheering this woman on and more or less went out of order for the last 10 or 15 minutes of this. Never once did the Senate President try to say anybody was out of order. He never tried to call for order. Everybody just kind of stood there while the crowd went off and screamed for about 15 minutes, right? So it comes up to about 11:59. The Republicans have had enough of this. They decide that they're going to take their roll call vote over it anyway and speak over the crowd, and they start to take their vote. At midnight, they had not taken their roll call vote yet. When the clock struck midnight, people were holding up their phones on the Senate floor saying, it's over, you guys have lost. The entire crowd started breaking out into chants of shame, 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 and it was basically over, right? I thought they had won. Well, it turns out that they did get a vote done, but it wasn't done until like 12:02. In fact, the official Senate Register, and they posted immediately on the website, says the vote did not come in until 12:02 on the 26th. Well, everybody that watched it live knew that basically they did not get this bill passed. Well, in the confusion after that, after the crowd finally hushes up and gets ushered out, they go ahead and go through the vote anyway after midnight. So they're saying, oh, we got the vote started, we won. When the Texas Senate the Register website, said that was absolutely not the case. Then the press started getting into it. This was completely and totally ridiculous watching this happen. The press started getting into it, and about two-thirds of the organizations were listening to the Republican senators that said, yeah, we got this vote done, it passed. And they were reporting it that the bill had passed. About a third of the organizations were saying, we watched it, we don't think it passed, but this is like up to contention. This went on for about 3 hours while they were having a closed-door meeting in the Senate, and each side was declaring victory, and the press was taking it and saying the victory had happened. I was getting pissed because I saw it live, and it didn't happen, and I was like, oh, hell no. If they try to steal this decision and they let it stand, I don't know what I'm going to do, but tomorrow I'm going to go out and occupy something over this or something. I saw them try to do this, and they were not going to steal it. More shenanigans go on. I checked the Register website at about 12:20, and they said the vote happened on the 26th. Other news organizations noticed that and said that too. About 1 a.m., the press starts saying, well, wait a minute, we checked the Register website. It says the vote happened at 11:59 on the 25th, so it looks like the Republicans won. And everybody was like, oh, no, they did not just try to steal that. Everybody started showing their screenshots and their printouts of how they had somebody had went and altered the timestamp on the thing. And it was getting really heated. Even at 3 a.m., the discussion was starting to get really heated everywhere, with each side declaring victory. Until finally, at 3 o'clock, after 3 hours of trying to figure out how they could steal the damn thing, I guess, the lieutenant governor said, well, we're going to have to concede it. The vote happened after midnight. And then he tried to blame it on, and it was these damn dirty protesters out there using their Occupy Wall Street tactics, when the honest truth about it is the Republicans could have got their vote through in time if they had just started their vote 2 minutes earlier. They waited till 11:59 and like 48 seconds to try it. If they had just done it over the crowd 2 minutes earlier, this wouldn't be a problem. But they screwed up and then tried to lie about it and steal it.
And did they tried to change the results, too, online or something?
Yeah, I mean, they did. I mean, they definitely
they doctored
did.
As far as the documents, and there was a whole hubbub
they
about
doctored
that,
the documents and then decided to claim victory. And, I mean, they basically had to concede it because they'd been caught trying to do it. I mean, there would have been Molotov cocktail parties the next day in Texas if they had stolen that. I'm not saying I would have done anything like that because I'm sure the NSA already loves me, but in my opinion, I think somebody other than myself might have.
Well, knowing that, but women in general, what they're doing to women is just kind of horrific. I mean, I like to say, hey, guys, we're going to say if you're over 50, you have to have a mandatory, let's clip something there. What you do to women, we're going to do to men. You know, I'm getting a little sick and tired of this.
You know, and in our just here in Texas, in our last Senate session, they passed the whole, if you're considering an abortion, you have to go have the transvaginal ultrasound done. I mean, that is literally the government trying.
And that's really an evasive process. I don't know if people realize how evasive that is, but that is. If you read up on what they actually do, it's like, I mean, women already have enough problems when we have to go into the doctor and you have to get a pap smear, which that in itself, I mean, I honestly hate that. I hate going in and getting that done. I mean, having one of those other things, that's just as bad. I mean, I don't think these men understand, you know, it's like, it's like, okay, that's like saying, okay, guys, you have to have a prostate exam every month if you want to do that. You want to play those games? You know? I don't know.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of shoddy signs going on. And, we read the article earlier about one of the Texas female senators that, you know, she was more or less trying to say that I cannot believe she more or less said this, but they were bringing up, you know, somebody had said while they were debating this, they were more or less saying, look, you know, what if somebody's raped? I mean, you cannot force that woman to try to have this child. And this woman said, well, I thought there were rape kits that they use on women at the hospital to clean women out and prevent that from happening. I mean, this woman thinks that a swab from a rape kit will prevent an unwanted pregnancy.
The rape kit is basically used to get DNA evidence off of a rape. That's basically all it's used for, is for getting the DNA evidence, and they can hold that evidence for a long time. Is basically what they can do, and what they can do is trace, you know, rapists in other states or in the same state if they're raping multiple women. Is what they use that evidence for.
Well, and I know they have a lot of these in Texas, but, I mean, I also think pretty much a lot of states have the same problem, too, that, you know, these swabs, these rape kits, I mean, there are tens of thousands of them sitting on shelves that have never been analyzed.
Oh, yeah. I know I've seen articles and reports on that. They have not been processed because there aren't the funds. So it's just kind of like, okay, chicken and egg, what are you trying to do? And then not only that, but I think didn't Congress or a federal court just also allow the Plan B to be put on shelves with no age restrictions, too? So that's out there.
Yeah, I'm glad they decided to come out on, I'm glad they decided to make that decision. I don't know, just seeing what, every time, you know, it seems like science or health and the government come together in that Venn diagram, it just does not work. I mean, it doesn't.
No, it's really scary when that comes together. Yeah, I mean, in the way, well, I don't know about you, but when I was living in Colorado, we had Focus in the Family out of Colorado Springs, and that's really scary. When I was going to school at UCD, they would bring these big, huge abortion pictures on campus, and it's really disturbing. And what they end up doing, what you find out what focus on the family tactics are, is they implant their people and they look like students, and they try to convince you that their point of view is correct. And there were a lot of people that were disturbed by their whole tactics and the way they did it, because there were girls there that had obviously had abortions, and it was just like their whole tactics and motives are very, very scary. So yeah. Especially when it's for a woman, it's your body and it's a very personal decision. And I've known a friend that had one back in college, and it's not an easy thing to do. You guys might think it's easy. It's not. I don't care who you are. It's not an easy decision. It's very personal, and anyone who says otherwise, you don't know the circumstances, and if there's medical stuff involved, it's very hard. It's not black and white. There's a lot of gray there, and it's very hard for couples and whatever position you are in. It's a hard decision, and to take away your right for that choice to do that is just, to me, it's just, it's like, well, great, we're going to go back to the early 1900s, and let's do coat hangers and women dying and bleeding out. Let's even make it worse.
Yeah, I know. I mean, if they make it where you can't legally get an abortion, I mean, I joke about it, but some bastard like me will sit there with his untwisted coat hanger, and I'll be standing in the back alley with a sign that says $75. Things like that are definitely going to happen.
Yeah. I mean,
I've got a true story about this happened back in 1995. It involved my high school. I was a sophomore in high school, and I was in our high school library, and our librarian, I think she was I think she was a pretty good person. I mean, I can't really say anything bad about her character. I was basically just in the library one day, and I happened to open one of the drawers in the library, and I found her, little abortion literature kit. And I just basically started going through it. And, like you said, it was all the extremely graphic, try to wrench your heart out through your nose type of material. I mean, it was extremely graphic and was just, completely 100% pro-choice stuff. It even told you were going to burn in hell and, don't make Jesus weep. I mean, it was some, pretty sappy stuff. And she, actually caught me looking at that stuff and tried to take me to the office for it. And, I brought up the point. I was like, what are you doing? And I had noticed this happening, too. Basically, there'd be rumors that somebody would be considered pregnant, and then pretty soon you'd hear over the PA system that girl being called to the library. Well, I basically found out what was going on, and, yeah, they are basically in our public schools trying to push their moralistic agendas on people. I can't even really, fundamentally hate them for that. Personally, I might think abortion is tacky if somebody uses it as, a repeated measure of birth control. There are better ways to do birth control than that, but, still, I would not try to impose my morals on anybody. I'm not in their shoes. That's not my right as a person to decide for anybody for any reason. But, that was a case of the school basically sanctioning this type of moral thought behavior.
Yeah, it's just, you're wondering if we're going down this whole thought police, 19 or Minority Report, too. Thought crimes from Minority Report. It's kind of scary. You think of a crime, you think...
Well, you're basically already a suspect. If you've read any of those leaked lists of, NSA keywords that they're looking for, literally any conversation could get you tagged. And, even that whole determination where they basically try to decide, it's we can keep all these communications if we think they're foreign, but if we think that they might be American, well, then we can't listen to them. Well, what they don't tell you is that the formulas that they use to try to determine if somebody is foreign or not, even by the NSA's estimates, they say that they're only right 51% of the time. So they're getting half of everything by default just right there.
Well, yeah, and I think hasn't not only the NSA but CIA, who knows how much of human intelligence they're even using anymore either, like the good old-fashioned, go out and investigate, follow people. I mean, we don't even know that. I mean...
Well, they're basically acting like nobody cares about this. I mean, just like seeing the way the news stories are unfolding now, I mean, a new Snowden leak, I mean, it doesn't even make the front page anymore. I mean, the NSA thing was the big thing about the news for 3 days, and all of a sudden it's like Kanye West, something happened to him, and then, oh my God, George Zimmerman's going to trial, and like I said, Paula Deen called somebody the N-word. Oh my God, an old white Southern woman in Savannah, Georgia saying an N-word 20 years ago, and you're really surprised.
And more I read up on her lawsuit, too, I'm questioning the media spin on it because I'm going, okay, now I'm hearing the lady that's doing the lawsuit say I'm in black. So I'm going, oh, this is interesting. If that's true, then that's extortion. And she's just totally destroying her over this one thing in the lawsuit. So if that's true, then you have to say, okay, media, you jumped on something and didn't investigate what the heck was going on.
Oh, hey, Ray is in the room. I've been wondering how you're doing, Ray. You're up in Alaska, and Heather and I have actually been kind of wondering, I mean, how is everything going up there with the weather? I mean, wasn't it just 98 degrees over the entire state? I mean, I've seen satellite photos, and there's not a single speck of ice left in Alaska. I was just wondering how things were going for y'all up there. Did I lose sound?
I don't know.
Oh, I don't know. I think Skype kind of like locked up there for a little bit, but I think everything's working now. But I was asking one of our friends in the room how everything was going up in Australia, and I don't know, Heather, what's going on with the whole global climate situation?
It's really chaos right now, I guess you can say. Everything's been whipsawing. You have the extreme hots like we're getting here in Nevada, and I think you're getting it in Texas too. And then you have the extreme colds, and from what I'm seeing on the East Coast now, they're getting rain and other stuff. So everything's whipsawing, and it's just kind of scary. It's going to get worse, which is even scarier.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
And watching the Weather Channel earlier before we came on the air, the highest lows were broken today in Phoenix, Vegas, and Tucson. The highest lows. So the lows made a new high, basically. And here in Reno, we broke a new high temperature today, and we have, I think, through Tuesday, 5 more days of this stuff. And we've already had some brownouts go out in electricity, so I'm going, this is going to be a very tedious weekend. So.
I actually watch the weather and worry about that, too, because, it seems to happen almost every year. I mean, especially in the Northeast, anytime a pretty big heat wave blows through the place during summer, I mean, everybody's running their air conditioner, and you see either blackouts or rolling brownouts happening for no reason other than being over capacity.
Well, yeah, and that goes back to our whole infrastructure, too. Our infrastructure is falling apart. I have a cousin who works down in L.A., and when I spoke to him a couple years ago, they could just barely keep up with major just repairs. And that's down in L.A., and that's not even upgrades. That's just repairs, which is scary. If you can barely keep up with repairs and not even upgrades, that's scary.
I know, the climate.
Glenn was asking what does CO2 have to do with it. Well, CO2, if you look, there's the hockey stick graph you've heard about. It's called the hockey stick. Everything with CO2 since, I think, the 1860s. Actually, I have a book. Maybe I can pull that up. I don't know if I can pull that up. But CO2 has been consistent until the 1860s, 1890s, and then it goes up straight up. And this is not disputed. Every scientist agrees with this. It's a known fact. And the problem we're having right now is we're having feedback problems. It's not just CO2, but with the melting ice caps, we have methane problems. Methane's being released, which is even more potent than CO2. So it's screwing up our jet stream. And so what's happened is the jet stream is kind of, they're calling it amplifying. So that's why we have these big ups and downs. And these, I don't know if you've seen a recent picture of the jet stream, but it's kind of wild what's happening with that.
Well, the one thing I've always wondered about basically the hockey stick graph is, yeah, the 1860s is, I mean, basically where the concentrations really, like, you know, start to make their...
And the big historical with the 1860s is, what would you say, I guess, industrial economy started.
Yeah, that's basically, the Industrial Revolution, the end of the Victorian era. But one of the things I'm wondering, though, I mean, if you want to look at it, it's like basically, the Industrial Revolution started in Europe. And they started in the UK and then started to spread into Europe. But, I mean, even at full tilt in 1860, Heather, I've just got to think that's got to be a percentage of, what's being put into the sky now. I mean, just look at in Shanghai. I mean, that's I mean, do you have any idea, like, how much higher our emissions are now? I mean, you'd think that the hockey stick would basically be going, that line would be going straight up by this point.
Oh, yeah. Actually, let me try to pull something up on current levels if I can find it. Current levels. CO2 parts per million, they keep going up. Currently in May 2013, it's 399 parts per million. And they're not expecting this to go back down at all. It's still going up. And even if we stopped with our coal-fire plants, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, it'd still keep going up because we have all these other feedback loops happening. So it's kind of scary. Hopefully we'll bring a guest on that can explain some of this a little bit more in depth than I can.
I mean, the EPA plan to basically, do away with coal-powered plants, I mean, that's going to affect, this county that I live in, pretty hard. I mean, this is a fairly small county, and, pretty much two of our biggest employers are the Jewett Lignite Mine, which is strategically located by the Jewett coal-burning power plant. And, I do know it's bad. I mean, we are burning lignite here. I mean, that's more or less the lowest grade coal that's out there. I mean, they say you're basically burning dirt when you're doing that, and, that's pretty much what you are doing. I mean, particulates and, even residual radiation effects. I mean, this lignite mine and this lignite plant are actually pretty dirty things, but they provide our electricity, and, they probably literally employ about a third of this county here. I mean, yeah, it's not the cleanest way to produce electricity, but, there's, like, nothing slated to replace it. And besides, what are they going to start doing with this coal if we're not going to be burning it here? They're going to basically start exporting it so somebody else can burn it.
More than likely I'll go to China, because China is one of the biggest consumers of coal right now. So China can consume everything on the planet right now, which is kind of sad.
All right, well, I'm getting a message from Joe Montaldo, and I think it is time for us to go to break. So, well, I guess we will pick this up on the other side of the break. See y'all in just a minute.
Side. Come join us every Saturday night at 7 p.m. Central for our 3-hour program. We have opinions on everything, and we're not afraid to share them. False history gets made all day, every day. The truth of the new is never on the news, but you can find it here with news on the flip side. Remember, don't be politically correct. Just be correct. Join us.
Tune in to UFO Undercover, Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern, with your host, Joe Montaldo, right here on the Paranormal Radio Network.
I'd like to welcome you back to the second hour of the Unabridged Universe here on the Paranormal Radio Network. Also, you can catch us on the internet and also on 107.7 FM in New Orleans. All right, and we're back. Well, all right, there's a few topics that are out there in the news that I think we can go over and review a little bit more of. One of the things I wanted to bring up was, you know, we've had all the hullabaloo out there. It's like after they asked for Edward Snowden's extradition, right? I can't believe I saw Nancy Pelosi do this. But Nancy Pelosi, I see her on MSNBC, and she's sitting there, she's like, I am shocked, disappointed, and just like completely out of the blue have no idea why Hong Kong and Russia aren't getting along with us. That completely surprised me. And I was like, really? That really surprised you? Well, some news has come out in the last couple of days that here's exactly why Hong Kong said, no, we're not doing this. All right. Basically, the Hong Kong Justice Secretary, Rimsky Yuan, says that there are discrepancies in the documentation filed by U.S. authorities. He said that basically they got Snowden's middle name wrong. The United States was sending a request warrant for Edward James Snowden, but Hong Kong had him there as Edward Joseph Snowden. There's a discrepancy in the middle name, and the U.S. authorities didn't even provide his passport number. Well, I mean, if you can't even get your extradition requests and arrest requests done right, I mean, why should anybody listen to your order? I mean, I just think it's kind of ridiculous the way that they're basically treating Russia and Hong Kong and China's reactions to all this. I mean, for a little while, I mean, it seems like, you know, all the powers that be, you know, the authoritarians on the GOP and apparently the new wave of Obama authoritarians are out there both saying that, you know, there are going to be repercussions for Ecuador. There are going to be repercussions against China and Russia, and especially Ecuador since they want to grant asylum to them, right? Well, what Ecuador basically stood to lose was, and this is another article that we can reference, is that basically Ecuador exports roses and frozen broccoli to the United States of America, and we don't charge any tariffs on it. That's what they stand to lose, a slight discount on roses and frozen broccoli. Ooh, I mean, that's really some leverage that we can throw against the Ecuadorians. That'll show them. Well, Ecuador has already taken a proactive stance on that and said, we withdraw from your stupid treaty anyway, America. And I don't know. It just seems like, you know.
Well, knowing that, it seems like Putin seems to be daring the U.S., too. We have the whole Syria thing going on, and that thing's about ready to blow up. So he might be using Snowden as a card.
Well, Obama was widely
criticized. It'll be interesting to see what's going to happen.
You know, Obama was widely criticized, you know, for basically what a lot of people consider his, like, world apology tour, you know, when he was a brand sparkling new president. Well, you know, he basically went around apologizing for the misdeeds of the United States and said, hey, look, you know, we're under new management now. We're Americans. We want to, like, be a positive part of the world, and this is going to change. And everybody loved it. And he even got a Nobel Peace Prize for it. And here we see, I think, is one of the most arrogant administrations ever. I mean, we are sitting there trying to bully and twist people's arms to make them comply with us. I mean, we're standing on Ecuador's neck. Oh, my God, we're going to, like, charge tariffs on their broccoli and their roses. That'll really show them. And, you know, especially with China and Russia, I mean, it's sort of arrogant for us to sit here and say, well, Russia's bad because they're not giving this guy to us. Well, then again, how many people, especially during the Cold War, have defected from Russia to the United States, and I'm sure Russia wanted them back and asked for them back, and America refused to return them. You know, things like this happen. I mean, now we're acting like it's some complete and total outrage.
Well, not only that, but U.S. every year accepts plenty of people for political asylum from many different countries, so it's not a new thing. So when ours want to do the same kind of thing, we're like, oh, this is really bad. I'm like, okay, it's not any different.
All right, hang on. Let me find this link real quick. Basically, one of the Ecuador's responses to the extradition request earlier was more or less, well, look, we've had a couple of bankers in the United States that we asked to be extradited back here to Ecuador, and the U.S. refused to turn them over. So, you know, stuff happens. And when we'd heard that, I mean, it was really hard to find references to any of these two bankers, but NPR actually came out with an article about it today. And to more or less make a long story short, in the 90s, Ecuador more or less had their own version of the savings and loan scandal. I mean, it involved, basically they needed an FDIC bailout that pumped $1.16 billion into one of their banks to keep it afloat. Well, it turns out that there were a number of bankers that were embezzling millions and millions and millions of these dollars. Well, two of these bankers they fled to Miami, and they took $20 million with them. Well, Ecuador had requested that these two bankers be extradited so they could finish criminal proceedings against them, and they asked for this money to be held and confiscated and returned. And the U.S. basically said, no, sorry, we are not returning those guys to you. We are simply refusing that. And quite frankly, they were saying it's almost embarrassing that you asked us to seize this money for you. He's like, you have no right to seize property in the United States. I mean, they were basically rather arrogant about it. And, you know, here we are basically calling them, the biggest bastards in the entire world for trying to grant Snowden asylum. I mean, you know, that's hypocrisy at its finest right there.
Yeah, there is a lot of hypocritical things going on. I guess another thing, going along the same thing is, I don't know if it's so much banking, but Congress being really hypocritical about things. I'm sure people out there have student loans. I do. I know there's many people with student loans out there. And right now, the student loans, debt or total debt, students with student loans debt, is $1 trillion. And so I guess the interest rate on the student loans are supposed to double. And everyone's going, oh, this is awful. But the problem is Congress hasn't even addressed the problems, in my opinion, with student loans. We have no jobs. So students that get out of college and have no jobs, how are you supposed to pay down your student loans? It's kind of like, okay, that doesn't help. Or when most of the students that are getting out are getting low-paying jobs, like they're still stuck in their waitressing jobs or jobs they had that they were working through when they were going to college. You know, their waitressing jobs, these low-paying $7 an hour jobs. So it's like, okay, that's not going to help you pay down your loans. And also, I don't know if people are aware, the student loan rate right now, the default rate, is equivalent to the subprime mortgage bubble here. That happened back in 2008. So,
yeah, just watching the partisan pissing contest that, it's something that was like barely even covered by the news too. I believe this is something people should be damn near outraged about. But it was the typical partisan pissing contest that we've seen happen. I can't even say just during this administration. I mean, basically since time immemorial, as long as I've been following politics. But, you know, the rates were basically set to go up if Congress did not do something before an appointed deadline. And both sides are like, well, we introduced our respective bills. We tried to do something positive here, and the other side simply refused to play ball. Each side basically is saying the exact same thing. When they both introduced absolutely ridiculous bills that they knew had absolutely no chance of passing, basically over completely and totally partisan lines. And who ends up getting hurt by their, by this, childishness? The students do. And I think it's just, I think there's, a fundamental problem with the student loan system, too, is that, basically if you owe money to the IRS, the government, or you took out a loan to go to college, those are the three types of financial obligations that you simply cannot get out under. I mean, there's no type of bankruptcy that will get you out of a six-figure loan that somebody is never going to be able to pay.
Well, exactly. And the thing is, this came out of when Congress changed the bankruptcy laws I think that was during Bush's administration. I can't remember the year it was, but that changed it. So student loans couldn't they couldn't discharge student loans, so, which is really not good. I mean, it's the only type of loan you can't discharge now.
I mean, I honestly believe that if people that honestly could not pay a ridiculous loan back, I mean, I think that would be that would probably be right up there up at the top of causes of bankruptcy, right there with medical bills.
Well, yeah. I mean, and then you could go back to the whole higher ed, how we've had this discussion several times, how when I first went to college back in 1993, I mean, college was affordable. I mean, it was $1,500 for the entire semester, and then you had, room and board, which was another $50. So it was like $3,000 for the entire year, which was affordable. And since that time, it's like quadrupled. It's insane. It's quadrupled. So you have to take out loans to go to school.
I mean, even in just a little more than 15 years. I mean, when I went to the University of Texas at Austin, I mean, 2 semesters cost me right at $10,000. And, that was everything. I mean, but that was everything. That was like books, that was tuition. I mean, that was even room and board, living on campus with the good meal plan where I could basically go down and eat whenever the hell I felt like it, more or less. And, the price of that has probably at least quadrupled in that time. And I started in 97.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's just totally insane. And then you can even look at quality, too. In my opinion, I mean, since that time, I thought I got a pretty good education down at Fort Lewis College down in Durango, Colorado, and I come here to Nevada and try, the higher ed here, and I just, I hate to say it, anything with education has just totally gone to the crapper. Everything. I mean, kind of sad to say that. But, I mean, when you go in there and people are on, I was taking a geography class, and the student, there's PhD students, teaching the class, and they had to tell the students, get off Facebook, get off your phones, you're here to learn, an hour in class? And they had to tell them to put them away, or you're going to get, they said if you need to take a phone call, you can quietly leave the room and take it outside, but stop your texting. And I was just like, whoa. But when I was first going to school, we didn't have that. We didn't have these phones. They didn't exist.
Yeah, we didn't have any. I mean, if I could have even gotten a cell phone when I was in college, I mean, it would have been like the size of a brick, and I would have had like 30 minutes on it, It would have been basically an expensive accessory. But now, well, yeah, everybody's distracted when you basically got a capable computer sitting there in your pocket.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just really, I'm sitting in another class and everyone's texting and on their Facebook. I'm going, okay, are you guys even paying attention or taking notes? No one's taking notes. No one's paying attention. I'm going, you're there to learn. If you're not serious about learning, why are you even there? That's my opinion. I mean, you only get what you get out of it. I mean, you have to sometimes, I hate to say, you have to put that phone down and away. I mean, parents can wait 15 minutes. It's not a big deal.
Well,
it's not like you have to do it right now. What's so important that you have to do it right now? I mean,
I know I'm old school. I mean, I'll get an instant message or a text or something, and I'll notice it, and I'll be like, and I won't even look at it until 45 minutes later when I'm done with whatever I'm doing. I mean, yeah, we kind of are like, well, you're a 74 model, and I'm a 78, and I don't know, we're kind of like the last generation that, we basically didn't grow up with this stuff in some form. I mean, if we were playing on computers, we were like looking at a monochrome screen, Apple II, or, I was playing on my Commodore 64 or something like that.
Oh, yeah, we were growing up with the technology, and even then, everything, you have the dot matrix printer, which it took forever to print with those dot matrix printers. We talk about old school, so they wouldn't even remember a dot matrix printer.
I know, and back then I was amazed by them. I was like, wow, look at what you can do in your home office.
Yeah. And then, this was back in the day. You go to the library and you had to use the card catalog and the Dewey Decimal System. I went in the library and I was like, okay. I mean, technology's, I've got to say, yes, technology's nice to a point, but is it making us stupid? Honestly, is this technology making us stupid because we're not thinking?
I've gone to a library and asked for the card catalog, and they pointed me to a computer terminal. I was like, okay. I don't know. It's just, well, you can kind of see, like, how it's sort of affecting the culture, too. I mean, especially the younger people. I mean, Facebook, their phones, everything, it's basically become a part of the culture and a part of the social structure. And they can't imagine not ever having that, not knowing what everybody's up to or where everybody is. And, that's completely at odds with a lot of people. And you sort of see this in the reaction to, basically how the NSA is spying on everybody and gathers everybody's communications. I mean, a lot of these younger people simply are not concerned about it because, they're already basically announcing every little minor thought in their head on Facebook and Twitter, and they're checking in on Foursquare, and, I mean, they really don't see what the big deal is.
Well, yeah, they didn't grow up with, like, the Cold War like us. We saw the end of the Cold War. We saw the fall of the Berlin Wall, which we never thought would happen. I mean, I didn't think it would happen. Were you amazed when that wall came down? I was just like, holy crap. When I saw that wall came down.
Even then, I mean, it's like once Russia started to fall apart, it fell apart.
Fast, very fast. Yeah, I mean, everything, it seemed like everyone was having internal problems in all those former Soviet blocs, and you're just like, oh, holy crap. But then I guess it should be expected as big as Russia was. I mean, or the Soviet Union.
I wonder what Boris Yeltsin has been up to since then. I mean, I haven't heard anything out of him in a while. Is he still alive?
I've seen an interview here and there. I think he has, I don't know if he has a government pension or something, but I think he's kind of laid low. So, I don't know. From what I've seen, he's kind of laid low. Yeah, if anyone knows anything what's going on with Boris, that's an icon from back in the day.
Well, I hope he's doing well. He seemed like the nicest of all the Russian presidents,
Well, yeah, I was trying to think of that whole term that they used around him when he came in office, too. Well, who can forget Reagan at the wall saying, Mr. President, tear down this wall.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. And all the East Germans cheering while a big section of it comes down.
Well, and the funny thing, I guess the second time, I don't know if this was completely in the news either. Well, yeah, our president went over to Germany to speak, but I guess the second time he went out, he was met by protest by the German people. the German people, when this whole NSA stuff came out, they were not happy. And then I guess they had to go and bring people in to listen to his speech. So he's not, Germany's not very happy with us right now.
I guess
they're like, what the heck? We went through this, we've been through this. We don't want a Stasi state again.
I don't know, just being this old now, and well, there's an entirely different perception of, even the office of the president and, the grandeur of the United States. I mean, even back then in the 80s, being Reagan babies and stuff like that, it just seemed like, there was more respect. I mean, yeah, we had the Cold War, but I honestly think the Cold War was one of the best things that, has ever happened to probably both us and Russia. I mean, it basically forced the two kids on the block to more or less compete against each other and, more see who could come up with the best. And, I think we have a lot of innovations that basically never would have happened. I mean, the whole space program was basically Russians won the first 2 rounds of it with a satellite and a man in space, and we won the prize when we put a man on the moon. The Cold War was a whole hell of a lot better for the world. I mean, yeah, there was the whole threat of nuclear Armageddon and, snowball Earth resulting out of it, but, it was something that was almost so scary that you knew either side was, too smart to let that happen. But now in this state of perpetual warfare, I mean, everything's just changed. And I never thought I would ever be old enough to say that. I guess I am getting old.
Yeah. Oh, no kidding. I'm with you there. Well, yeah, you're just kind of going, holy cow. And come to find out, too, about history, I guess. Yeah, here we go into history again. The East Germany basically bankrupted itself because it was investigating its people so much with surveillance, and then they kept building up their wall and the infrastructure of the wall to keep their people in, and that basically bankrupted them, East Germany. I mean, you're just kind of like, oh, okay, so is that what's going to turn into the U.S.? We're going to spend trillions of dollars watching our own people, and then we're also going to war, which aren't on the books. So we're going to bankrupt ourselves into perpetual, nothingness.
I know, and, there's really, that and the, privacy intrusion and everything. I mean, really, ultimately, there's nothing we can actually do about it, that wouldn't at least take years to get the problem fixed. That's if we can start, playing within the system and fielding our own politicians and getting them elected and getting them on the committees and, getting, the majority of the House and Senate. It's like, well, yeah, that's possible, but, I mean, the powers that be have a lot of money invested into this game, and they're not simply going to just go quietly into the night because it's the right thing to do. No, they're not going to do that. So what can you do? And as far as the surveillance and everything goes, basically what all the little tech experts recommend you to do is if you actually want privacy, then, start encrypting everything that you do. Well, it's already been found out, and NSA analysts have basically told Congress and everybody else that, well, guess what? If you use encryption, we're going to snag it and try to crack it just because. They've even more or less bragged about it. They're going to be able to more or less unlock and read everything once they get their data center in Utah up and going.
Well, from what I've understood from an interview by an NSA whistleblower, that center is already up and running now.
Yeah, and they're basically...
It's already collecting stuff right now.
Yeah,
I guess it wasn't supposed to be up until next year, but it's already up and running.
Yeah, and even now they're still going to be adding capacity to it probably until the end of time. And I don't know, a lot of people just simply aren't seeing the big picture. I mean, one of the latest NSA leaks was, the fact that it's Britain that's actually, collecting the bulk of the lion's share of the entire world's traffic. I mean, they're sitting right there on all of the transatlantic cables, and they're basically just mirroring all of that and storing all of it. Now, Britain has the capacity to basically hold all of it for up to, what'd they say, 3 weeks, and they could hold metadata for 30 days. I'm not exactly sure on those figures, but it's something like that.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
But, yeah, they have a limited capability to, like, gather and actually analyze that. Well, guess what? It just so happens that we're building this center in Utah that's got more than enough capacity and more than enough processing power to be able to, like, get into that, encrypt everything, and analyze all of it. So you kind of see how the game is sort of being played here. I mean, this little gang of 5 snitches that they've got going on, more or less the English-speaking world, us, the UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. I mean, I think we'll probably see, like, more documents being leaked out of Snowden through Greenwald that more or less outline the Australian and Canadian New Zealand components of this whole scheme, too.
Well, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, if you start listening to the NSA whistleblowers, they're like, yeah, we were talking about this back in 2002 when Bush was around. And they've just expanded their capabilities and dumped more money into it. And then that goes back to the whole Booz Allen racket, too, with these private companies. They're taking U.S. taxpayer dollars to collect this, collect data. You kind of question what the heck they're doing with it when you have a private company doing this sort of thing.
Well, yeah, and it's like I've only seen just a handful of articles basically, saying who Booz Allen is. I mean, you think that every place that was worth its salt that wanted journalistic credibility would give you basically a history of that company, what they're involved in, and how much money they're getting from the government. Well, Bloomberg finally did that, and this information, Heather's seen it. I mean, you went and checked, you can give some of the figures. I mean, Bloomberg reported on it, but they're basically there on, the Booz Allen Hamilton website. They disclose all of it.
Oh, yeah, it's all public information. You can just Google Booz Allen, go to their website, and look at everything. They have their pocket and everything. I think they have their hand in, I can't remember if it's Social Security, but seems like everything. I mean, it's everything from defense to, everything.
Well, yeah, I mean, basically this company, it's a classic example of the military-industrial complex, I believe. Of all the espionage and all the spying and information gathering that the United States of America does, people actually employed by the U.S. government, NSA or CIA or whatever, they only do 30% of all of it. And Booz Hamilton is proud to boast about this, that actually 70% of all the espionage and wiretapping and snooping that goes on is done in the private sector. Well, guess what? There's only one player in the private sector, and it's Booz Allen Hamilton. I mean, they basically got their foot in the door at the beginning of World War II. I mean, they helped out with the USS and a lot of the information programs back then, but they basically had a monopoly on the intelligence game since then. I mean, in fiscal year 2013, they got like $6.83 billion from the United States government. And Bloomberg broke it down. And like Heather was alluding to, they were getting money from basically every sector. The VA was giving them money. They were getting money out of Medicare and Medicaid. I mean, straight from, of course they were getting like billions of dollars from Homeland Security and from the CIA. But basically the USA is more or less paying $7 billion or so, to get all of this done. I mean, I'm sure there's more money than that, too, to more or less a private company that can do this. And I'm just now seeing some of the people in the media start to question that. I read an opinion piece on Reuters that was like, if everybody's come down so hard on the Obama administration for Benghazi and for the IRS problem, how come nobody's making a big deal out of Booz Allen, which is the biggest scandal of them all? And I brought up this point from the beginning, and nobody else seems to have until now. But basically, if Edward Snowden was walking out of his job with gigabytes of top-secret sensitive data that he pulled from the NSA and all of our databases, and the only reason we know that he got out with it completely and totally clean is because he actually released it to the press, I mean, I think there should be an investigation, because if Snowden was able to do that, how many other people could have done that, but we just never heard of it because that flash drive went straight to China or North Korea or Iraq, or Iran, or God knows who else. I mean, that's one of the things that I think people should be raising hell over, but, I mean, you even started to see, I mean, both sides of our, representative government, Democrats and Republicans, are basically coalescing behind the president on this.
Well, yeah, because they're all bought and paid for by the corporations and banks. You look at who donates to them and who donates to them. I mean, it's bribery.
Well, just look at
bribery, basically. You can't tell me those guys aren't getting favors in return. They're getting, Congress is the same one that passed this Insider Information Act, where they can trade on insider information on stocks and bonds. You wonder how they're getting rich? That's how they're getting rich. They're getting rich off of that and land deals.
Yeah, so your senators receiving campaign funds from a financial institution. Oh, it's okay for them to get tips from this financial institution, but, let's throw Martha Stewart in jail.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of insane. It's, really hypocritical. I mean, and then, I don't know if anyone's heard Joel Saleni lately, but he calls them, they're like the crime bosses, like the Gambino family, basically. You pick your crime family, which Italians or which ones, from the 80s where the FBI was going in and busting these guys up. They're like the Gambino family. They're a big crime syndicate. They're working with the banks and the corporations and, the criminals working with other criminals and, everything's a crime. And they're trying to cover up their crimes. If we find out really what's going on with their crimes, I think we'd all be really shocked. And I think listening to these NSA whistleblowers going down these rabbit holes, when you start listening to them, you're just like, holy crap, this is not good. This is scary. It's really scary.
Yeah, and these guys basically calling them whistleblowers, I mean, they were treated as criminals, and they completely and totally played within the system. I mean, there's the story of William Binney. And actually, I was kind of upset, realizing what they had here. And, all right, basically, let me tell you a little story. In the late 90s, Mr. Binney, a 40-year CIA veteran, and several other people, and a lot of them, actually faced felonies over complaining about what happened here, they had a program called Thin Thread that was basically... it was a better intelligence system. It would gather, it would take all the information that was gathered, and it would analyze and look for key threats, but it did have some protections for privacy built in. Basically, the system was supposed to automatically, with nobody watching over this or able to get any of the information even out of the system, basically it analyzed everything. It would tag key threats, but it would encrypt the entire database. I mean, it could not be unlocked. Nobody could just, go in and look at it unless you were specifically looking for something. So it would still encrypt everything, but it would forward requests, and tag the information to analysts that could then, go through and try to get warrants. I mean, this was all pre-September 11th stuff. And, they actually had the system worked out. They basically had it, beyond alpha testing, in 99 and 2000, and it more or less did its job with flying colors. I mean, they're saying that it was much better than the system that they have now, and this system was more or less completely and totally ready to go, But then President Bush gets into power. They have a new director of the NSA. They've got somebody new in power. And this guy pretty much had a political axe to grind. He had a competing program called Project Trailblazer, which was basically supposed to be his idea of this all-seeing eye information system, right? Well, basically what he did was he came in and he completely and totally scrapped Thin Thread and assigned everybody else to Trailblazer, and, they even worked on the successor to Trailblazer. Well, Trailblazer was basically a political move that was championed by the new NSA director, and so he more or less just canned Thin Thread, which worked for no reason, and proceeded to waste a couple of $1 billion. I mean, Trailblazer is one of the biggest blunders and wastes of money that has ever worked. They spent a lot of money and never had a system working. And, well, the whistleblowers, Benny and Company, decided that they were going to complain about this. Meanwhile, after ThinThread was a complete and total failure, they then came up with what they called Stellar Wind, and I'll explain Stellar Wind in just a minute. But they destroy ThinThread. They waste a bunch of money on Trailblazer. So Benny and Company go to complain about it. They go through official channels. They tried to go to the Defense Investigator General, and they basically said, look, we were involved in these projects. This is what we had working. This is what they screwed up. We believe that, they are breaking the law here. Because once they started coming up with Stellar Wind, which some of these people were involved with, based on good work they had done on ThinThread, basically what Stellar Wind was it was the core of ThinThread, but with no protections and no safeguards, and basically all of the good features of ThinThread were more or less stripped out. And, the whistleblowers said, look, they killed a good program, they wasted a bunch of money, they tried to resurrect our program, and they are basically destroying the Fourth Amendment by doing this. This is wrong. Well, the DIG did nothing about it, so they went to a congressional committee, one of these top secret congressional committees that, nobody can tell anything what's going on in them, right? Well, he said they tried to go to them with this information. But basically what happened, and this happened under Bush, was these guys tried to go through official channels and complain what was going wrong, doing their job the way they should. Well, they were trying to look at this like these people were spies. By going to the DIG and the Congress with this, they said that they were committing espionage and leaking information. Bush basically had the FBI go kick in their houses, hold everybody at gunpoint, and look for information. And if you hear any of Benny's interviews about this, there's more to it than that I won't get into here. But more or less, these guys were being watched. The fact that they were investigated by the FBI meant that these guys were more or less kicked out of their careers. They couldn't even be consultants because being investigated by the FBI, you're more or less blacklisted. You lose your top secret clearance in the industry that they were in. They were worth nothing. I mean, their jobs were taken from them. Their lives were basically destroyed. The FBI did the indignity of kicking these guys in houses in and ransacking everything. And to make it worse, in 2010, they prosecuted people who were charged with felonies by Obama. I mean, my God. And you wonder why Edward Snowden didn't, just release the information and wait for him to come get him. I mean, these guys tried to play within the system and were treated like felons, had their careers destroyed and their lives more or less uprooted. I mean, poor Bradley Manning. I mean, I think he more or less did it in not the brightest way. I mean, he knew what was coming. I mean, he was an active service member and he did this, and he made no attempts to, either safeguard the information or anything like that. I mean, what he did was incredibly stupid compared to what Edward Snowden did. I mean, Snowden did the smart thing. What would you do if you saw that whoever you work for was breaking the law? I mean, I think it's our job as Americans to more or less say what's happening.
Well, yeah. I mean, it comes down to it's like a moral issue. What do you find morally? Have you seen anything that's been morally wrong that you just can't? That's what Snowden came to the conclusion of. He's seeing all the stuff and he's going, this is wrong. If he can snoop on someone, with his clearance, and he's just a contractor, that's kind of scary. I mean, you could have someone snoop and they could ruin your life. They could destroy your life for no reason. I mean, basically everything out, all your information out there, access to it is at an analyst's discretion. I mean, there's no oversight. I mean, it's blatant. It's the rules are right there at an analyst's discretion. So anybody like Snowden or anybody else that works for for Booz Allen Hamilton, I mean, that's you have no protection. They can that, but you look at the FISA court too, and that's like a monkey court. I mean, basically, from what I'm hearing too, the FISA judges don't have high enough clearances to see the when they bring information to the FISA court, they don't have high enough clearances, and so they have to black out a lot of the information. So that's a little screwy. If you don't have a high enough clearance to read the information, then they just stamp it every time. It's like, what's wrong with that? I mean, it's a total monkey court. That's a total monkey court or something.
It's completely and totally secret. And what Snowden has leaked out of the FISA court, I mean, basically their rules of how to do things more or less indicate that they've got a blank pass to do whatever they want. Oh, and Heather, there are a lot. What amazes me is there are an awful lot of people out there that have never heard of Senators Wydahl and Uden. I mean, these guys have been out there for years. I mean, years ago, they tried to say, look, we are on this congressional committee where we receive the secret briefings about things. And
I think Udall's from Colorado. I have heard of him. He's from Colorado. I think he's up in Boulder. So, yeah, he's a pretty new I think he's a representative, or is he a senator? He might be a representative.
He's a senator. And basically, he's been saying, look, we've been receiving this information. He's like, and if we could tell you the things that we know, I mean, they're basically saying that everything is bad here. These are two senators on the secret committees. I mean, they've even come up in the news a lot lately. I mean, even like some of the official statements that the NSA has put out. Wyden Udall and about 20 other U.S. representatives basically wrote a letter to the NSA saying, look, these talking points that you put out, they're saying, look, these points, and these points are specifically wrong. They completely and totally contradict what your people and your analysts have told us in these secret congressional hearings that we can't even tell people about.
Oh, yeah, and the American public has no access to hear. We have no access to see this stuff, too. It's like, okay, well, I don't know about you, but it's like when something's in secret and we don't know what's going on, and if the senators can't tell us about it, you're kind of like, okay, so what are we left to think of what's happening behind closed doors?
I don't know. I mean, all the way up to the president. I mean, even just like his initial reaction to this, where he said that, well, if you want 100% security, you're going to have to give up something, you know. Well, first off, I can't believe nobody said that was a bold-faced lie, because quite simply there's no such thing as 100% security. I mean, we found out that they're basically snooping on everything. I mean, we had a hat tip from foreign intelligence about the Zarnev brothers. I mean, there are analysts and...
Well, I think it was the Russian intelligence office that actually tipped off the FBI, and they didn't do anything about it.
Yeah,
and then come to find out the FBI was probably trying to recruit them. So there in that self, you're like, okay, so why is the FBI trying to recruit the brother? So there's more to that when you get these intelligence agencies together and they're trying to recruit, and you're just like, so are they going to use him as a double agent? What's going on here, you know? And you start looking at all of our conflicts. Well, the FBI and CIA have been colluding in all these sorts of wars. And you, like I said, you go back and listen to these FBI agents, the whistleblowers, you know, the whole gun-running CIA, you know, war on drugs. I mean, they're all interconnected. I mean, the CIA's been running drugs for years. This came out by Michael Rupert and others, you know, have lost their lives over it. So, I mean, all this stuff is interconnected once you start going, holy cow, it's scary. It's scary.
It almost does look like the powers that be have a stranglehold on just about everything. Now, I mean, I'm not going to go all InfoWars on you and, like, start telling you about, like, wild, wacky conspiracies, but I mean, I do have to, like, give some proponents of theories like that, you know, a little bit of credit. It does look like there might be something going on here. I mean, when basically you've got the government saying how things are, and when it's really the job of the press to expose what everybody is doing and how the government is operating and all of the things that are going on here, you know, even the journalists are starting to turn on each other. I mean, my God, NBC News should be completely and totally disgraced between the whole race baiting thing that, you know, sparked all the fury about the Trayvon Martin incident. You know, that's even still going on today, that they basically edited the tapes and, you know, race baited and made this like some national outrage. to, the hit piece that David Gregory tried to do on Glenn Greenwald, where he suggested that, it's that journalists should all be treated as criminals. My God, it almost is like they're trying to control, like, thoughts and information and how everybody should be thinking. It's gotten bad enough, like that stupid little poll that they came up with that, well, 56% of people say that they don't care about the NSA phone records thing. So, look, Americans, you actually want this. And you got half of these idiots out there that believe it.
Oh, yeah. And that goes back, I guess we could go to dumbing down America. But, everything is starting to intertwine, interlace. It's all interconnected, which is kind of, we get back to our recurring nightmares.
Yeah.
I don't know. It seems like it's turning into one big nightmare. I know.
Well, I don't know where Joe is, but I do believe we're getting somewhere near the end of the show. And, I hope y'all enjoy this show that we put together for y'all. It didn't really have a plan, but, hey, that's how some of the best radio happens, right? But, actually, Heather has managed to get a guest for us, somebody that knows a little bit more in depth about some of the topics that we bring up. And, Heather, if you'd like to introduce them for us.
On our next show, it's called the Economic Blog Spot. And I think he's been on Zero Hedge and some other sites. He does those top 25 lists or top 17 lists of what's happening to America and the economics and the American dream. He also has a book coming out, I believe. So we're going to have him on and talk about his stuff and what he's been seeing with the economics and how he got started and what he's worried about, and go from there. Hopefully it'll be an interesting interview and talk to these citizen reporters out there and how they got started and why they're concerned about things.
And I've read some of our guests' work, and, a lot of his articles and a lot of his posts are pretty much, he lays the information out there, right there for you.
Yeah, he has sources, he has articles he posts in his things. He's pretty articulate, so he's pretty spot on, too, on a lot of things in my mind from what I'm seeing happening.
And, some of the things that he's saying, when you realize that, oh, my God, this guy might actually be right, are genuinely scary.
Yeah. So we're going to bring him on for an hour and talk to him, and hopefully we can have you guys bring questions on, or we'll go from there. We'll see what happens, and, yeah. I think you and I had some... We've been batting around ideas for guests too, so hopefully we can bring some people on.
Yeah, and there's no telling what we might be covering too. We're not going to just limit ourselves to any one particular topic. Who knows? I guess we could always fall back on some of the paranormal if we have to.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. I think we're being pretty flexible and what we want to do and what we want to cover.
Well, yeah, and I don't know, Heather, what are some of the topics that, what are some of your issues and pet peeves?
I have plenty. I don't know. Right now, I don't know. I guess right now I'm just trying to survive. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there just trying to survive day to day. So just getting by and surviving and looking at the world and going, God, is it me? Am I living in a bad Looney Tunes commercial? Cartoon. So I don't know. If anyone feels that way, if you're looking outside and going, oh, bad Looney Tunes. Remember those Wile E. Coyote ones where he's running and you're looking down, there's a cliff and you're going, uh-oh. So,
I know. It's like you expect to feel that falling sensation in the pit of your stomach at any given second.
Yeah. I just know probably one show, we'll see if we can't bring someone on to talk about some of the water issues out here in the West, out here in Nevada specifically. Maybe we can bring someone on to talk about that. But the water issues out here in the West are getting pretty bad and pretty critical right now. And there's a lot of stuff happening that aren't being addressed, and it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next couple of years. I think it's going to be a hard ride.
Yeah, the effect that it's going to have on agriculture too, and the basic food that we eat. I mean, reading those surveys about, just water well production up in the Midwest, in the heartland of America. I mean, basically, entire farms were built around wells that, when they were dug back in the 50s and 60s, these things were putting out, 3,000 gallons a minute. And the output has gone down until it basically, reached a complete and total fall-off to now these same wells are only putting out 150 gallons per minute. And, they're clogging with sand so much that, these wells are basically dead. It's getting bad enough that they're literally going to run out of water, and then what are we going to do?
Well, yeah, and then we have the whole drought, fire issues, which are exacerbating everything at the same time, and our heat issues. So, we're going to have to make some hard choices with our water usage and how we use our water. And I don't know, I don't know about you, but it's not going to be easy. Not going to be easy.
Now it's getting bad enough out here now that, storm season is over. It's become like tinderbox season, but we'll see how that works.
I also heard a report on California where they're having fire season year-round. They have high and low fire season is what they call it, and right now summer is considered high and the winter is considered low. So if that doesn't tell you anything, I don't know. Are we going to have year-round fire season? Last winter here in Nevada, we had a couple fires. We didn't have any fires this winter, but we also our snowpack was down. So things are kind of okay. And now it's really hot here, so we could get fires again. We could get fires out of California. It's going to be really kind of interesting to watch.
I know. I'm afraid it's going to be like a mirror image of 2011 again this year because, here in Texas, it was bad. It was basically tornado season during the spring. Really seemed like one every 3 days. Then it got up to 100 degrees plus and, didn't rain until October. And, oh, my God, if that happens again, I don't think this place is going to be called the woods anymore. It'll start to turn into a desert. Well, actually, Heather, I think we've gone over a little bit, kind of like that Senate vote.
Yeah, the Senate vote, yeah. Texas Senate vote.
And actually, I'm going to try to see if I can get some of the parties involved to come on and talk about that, too, because, oh, man, I have not been that riled up by anything political in a long time. I was this close to being pissed.
Yeah, that would be interesting to talk to some people about that.
Well, actually, I guess Heather and I will be back, and we'll see you week after next. You tune in this time next week. You'll catch Guy and Sasha doing their show. We share custody of Friday, 8 to 10 every other week, so be sure to tune in. You always have a good show to listen to.